So this video is just going over the sections of the proposal. I realize I kind of went through this really quickly in the introduction to the assignment, so I'll just take another moment and go through it. So this is a download just from the Canvas site. It's called Common Sections of a Proposal. The video is called the same, so you should be easy to find. I did talk about the cover letter, the letter of transmittal, in the assignment introduction. So remember, all that does is it's a professional letter that introduces your proposal. It's one page. So I would look at the sample for that and follow that. On the table of contents and executive summary here, you don't need to write. So don't write these things. If you accidentally do, I'm not going to dock you any points for doing it. But you can just skip those, just because you do have a shorter proposal for this. First, you'll have an introduction. This will be about a paragraph long, and it clearly tells what you propose to do, or what your proposal is about. And it provides any background information the readers will need or want. So you won't probably share actual research here, but you'll just share the background of the problem, and you could probably take some of this from your problem statement. And if it will help your audience, which usually it will, it also forecasts the rest of your proposal. So it kind of tells the audience how your proposal is laid out and what kind of information you'll give. And each section has this line that says contains a strategy for establishing a partnership with your audience. The PowerPoint on themes will help you do this. So look at that PowerPoint for ideas on how to do that. But an example would be like if your client cares a lot about community, you could talk about how solving the problem would benefit the community. Something like that. So the problem statement is the next section. And you did write a problem statement for component 1, but here you'll probably want to introduce some of the research you found in your examination of the problem. You'll probably maybe want to be a little bit more detailed and so on. So this explains the problem you identified here at Pittsburgh State or at your workplace. It persuades the audience that the problem is important to them and or the institution. So think about what could happen if this problem is not solved, for example. And also review that handout on problem statements, again, if you find it useful. The objective section, like I said in the brief introductory video, basically gives your reader an idea of how you plan to examine the problem. So will you do surveys? Will you do interviews? Will you do like brand analysis? Like what are you going to do? And I do have a handout on different methods you can use in business proposals in the Canvas site. So you can probably find that, download it, and think about whatever methods will help you. For your objectives, you're just listing these methods. You're not talking about them in detail. You'll talk about them in detail in the methods section. Your solution describes the solution in a way that assures the audience can understand it. So consider the scope of your audience. What does your audience need? Why is this important and problem solved for your audience? And think about the objectives you talked about. How will those objectives help you come to a solution? And then finally, methods. Methods are just taking your objectives and talking about them in more detail. So think about if you did a survey. What kind of questions might you ask? How long will the survey take to implement? How will you share the survey with others? How will you compensate people for their time in taking the survey? And it persuades that the methods you plan to use for creating the solution will work. So make sure you've established the credibility of your team and the audience believes in you. So think about your majors. Think about why you chose to tackle this problem in the first place, or your experience with the problem, and that will help demonstrate credibility. Schedule is just your timeline. This should be shared as a table. And if you remember, you do have to have one table for this assignment. So this is where you can have your table. And it just shares with the audience how many weeks the project will take. So how many weeks will you use for the survey? How many weeks for the analysis of the data? How many weeks for research of the problem? And don't forget, you want to share this information with the audience or with the person who can solve the problem. So you'll want to share, like a last one could be dissemination of results to client. And you could just do that during a one-day period. So you can share that as a table. And make sure it's a table that's easy to understand too. Usually if you set up tables, they're usually pretty user friendly. So make sure to have that. And then costs and resources. So like I said in the brief video, there's a number of ways you can do this. You can create a dummy budget where you just say according to our solution and the scope of our project, this is the most cost-effective plan for you, and just end it there. Some people will actually list different amounts for things, like how much it might cost to put out a survey, or how much it might cost to get a piece of equipment, or something like that. People might have estimated costs, and they can be estimated. That's okay. Other times, people may also talk about resources. So, who's going to help you with the project? Are you going to partner with another organization to work on solving this problem? So on. And then finally, we have the conclusion, which summarizes the key points and serves as a bookend to the introduction. And make sure to end on a positive note. Say something like, once this problem is solved, maybe the product will be improved or a process could run more smoothly. So those are the different sections of the proposal. I do have a sample proposal for you, and I know lots of people benefit a lot from looking at samples. So I make sure to have one at least. And the sample is Project 5, Component 4. You can just take a look at that. If I remember correctly, the students probably got a B for this, but they do have most of the parts that they needed for this. Note, do not just say letter of transmittal goes here. You actually have to write your letter of transmittal. So don't copy this completely. They lost points because they didn't, even though they didn't need table of contents, they did need that letter of transmittal. So they have the executive summary, which again you don't need, but they included that. They didn't get docked for it. Introduction is here. And as you can see, they include some of their research here as well. And then the problem statement is here. And again, they do have some research here. They talk about Professor Cooper, who they interviewed, and so on. And then they have criteria and objectives. So just what your main objective is in solving the problem, some of the steps you may take to do it. The solution section, methods, schedule, and there they have their table. It should say table 1 there, by the way, not just table. And then they have costs and resources, qualifications, which we didn't talk about, but you could have a qualification section if you wanted to, just talking about how your majors or your experiences help you in solving the problem. And then the conclusion at the very end, along with their works cited list. And remember, you need 5 sources at least. So thank you for listening. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you.